Welcome back to Tale of Wonder. At the summit of the Jade Pillar Mountain, the air wasn't just thin, it was disciplined. It was a place where silence had weight, where the mist clung to the pines like a robe of judgment. And at the heart of this silence was the Jade Pillar Temple, a school of kung fu so ancient, so steeped in rigid tradition, that the stones themselves seemed to hold their breath. The school was ruled by Sifu Bohan, a man who looked like he'd been carved from the mountain's granite. His spine was straighter than the bamboo shafts used for training, and his philosophy was just as unbending. Form is everything. Intent is weakness. Victory is the only truth. His prized pupil, his legacy, was Jyn. Jyn was not just a student. He was a demonstration. When Jyn moved, it was like watching calligraphy come alive. Every strike was perfect. Every block was a mathematical certainty. He was beautiful, he was precise, and he was utterly, terrifyingly cold. He was the living embodiment of Bohan's law. And then there was Ren. Ren was the temple's shadow, the smudge on the perfect scroll. Where Jyn was precise, Ren was distracted. Where Jin's kicks snapped like a dragon's jaw, Ren seemed to hesitate, as if asking permission to strike. He wasn't weak. He wasn't untalented. He was just wrong. He was the student who would pause mid-form because he noticed the way the sunlight hit the dust. He was the one who, instead of breaking a board, would study its grain. Sifu Bohan tolerated Ren for one reason and one reason only. Ren's family had funded the temple's new roof. To Jyn, Ren was an irritation, a pebble in his perfectly cobbled path. "Your center is weak, Ren," Jyn would say in the middle of the training floor, his voice cutting through the silent focus of the other students. "You move like a confused old man. Your spirit is soft." And Sifu Bohan would watch and nod, believing that the forge of Jin's contempt would one day harden Ren's soft spirit. But Ren wasn't soft. He was observant. He noticed things no one else did. He noticed the tiny, imperceptible limp Sifu Bohan disguised every morning, a relic of an old injury. He noticed that Jin's knuckles were always chalk white before a strike, a telltale sign of tension, not power. Ren didn't want to beat Jyn. He just wanted to understand. Why did perfection look so painful? His curiosity, his wrongness, led him to the one place he was forbidden to go. The temple library was a cold, cavernous room that smelled of sandalwood and decay. Sifu Bohan, in a rare moment of generosity, had assigned Ren to recatalog the ancient, rotting scrolls, a punishment disguised as a task, meant to keep him away from the training floor. For weeks, Ren sifted through texts on herbal medicine, calligraphy, and forgotten dynasties. And then, in a loose floorboard beneath the oldest rack, he found it. It was a box of dark, heavy wood, bound not by a lock, but by a complex sailor's knot. It was the only thing in the entire temple that was messy. Inside was a single scroll, made of silk so fine it was almost translucent. The title, inked in faded red, read, Shunan Show, the gentle warm hand. It wasn't a combat manual. Not really. The diagrams didn't show devastating punches or bone-breaking kicks. They showed touches. They showed fingers resting lightly on the wrist, a thumb pressing gently beneath the ear, a palm cupped over the solar plexus. The text was cryptic, more like poetry than instruction. It spoke of untying the knots of the spirit, of finding the river beneath the ice, of listening to the body's secret sorrow. At the very bottom, in Sifu Bohan's own sharp, angry handwriting, were two words: banned. Forbidden. Ren was terrified. He was also, for the first time in his life, hooked. This was what he had been missing. It wasn't about breaking an opponent. It was about understanding them. He didn't steal the scroll. He didn't have to. The strange, gentle movements burned themselves into his mind. He began to practice in secret, in the dead of night, by the light of the moon. He didn't practice on training dummies. He practiced on the temple's dying bonsai tree, the one Bohan kept as a symbol of failed discipline. Ren would stand before it, his fingers hovering over the brittle branches, feeling the knots in the wood. He'd apply a gentle pressure to the trunk, a light taps on the root base. He told himself he was insane. But a week later, a single green leaf unfurled. He grew bolder. In sparring, he stopped trying to block Jyn's perfect strikes. He started redirecting them, but not with force. Jyn would launch a flawless sidekick, and Run, instead of meeting it with a solid block, would simply touch Jyn's ankle. Just a light brush of his fingers. It did no damage, but it interrupted the flow of energy. Jyn's perfect kick would land awkwardly, his balance broken. Jyn was furious. What was that? That clumsy lucky slap? Fight me properly. Run would just bow. My apologies, senior brother. Sifu Bohan saw it too. He dismissed it as Ren's inherent clumsiness accidentally working. You're a rock in the river, Run, Bohan scoffed. You do not move with purpose. You simply force the current to move around you. It is ugly. But Ren knew. He wasn't a rock. He was a hand, feeling the current, finding its temperature, its true direction. And he was starting to understand why the technique was banned. It wasn't a weapon of force. It was a weapon of intimacy. In a school built on impenetrable walls, the Shunan Show was a key. And Sifu Bohan, Ren realized, was a man who lived his entire life in a locked room. The escalation came, as it always does, not from a whisper, but from a scream. It was the Five Dragons Conclave, the most prestigious, most brutal martial arts tournament in the province. The Jade Pillar Temple's reputation, Bohan's entire life's work, rested on this event. Jyn, of course, was their champion. He was untouchable. He moved through the preliminary rounds like a surgeon. His opponents weren't just defeated, they were dismantled. Jyn's arrogance swelled with every victory. Before the semifinal match, he decided to warm up for the crowd. He was demonstrating a high-flying, spinning dragon's tail kick, a move of pure, unnecessary vanity. He launched himself into the air, a perfect, spinning crescent. But in his arrogance, he had failed to notice a small, wet patch on the platform from a spilled water bottle. He landed. There was no snap, no dramatic crack, just a pop, a small, wet, sickening sound. Jyn's perfect form dissolved. He landed not as a dragon, but as a sack of laundry. He crumpled to the ground, his face pale, his teeth gritted. It wasn't a break. It was a microfracture in his ankle, tiny and devastating. He could stand, he could walk, but he could not fight. He could not be perfect. Sifu Bohan's face was a mask of thunder. The Jade Pillar Temple was about to forfeit the final match. The humiliation would shatter their legacy. Bohan's eyes scanned his students, full of disgust. They were children, none of them ready. His gaze fell on Run, who was standing by the water buckets, holding a towel. You, Bohan barked. Rin froze. Sifu, you will fight. The entire team gasped. Jyn, leaning on two junior students, actually laughed. A sharp, painful bark. Sifu, no. He's a disgrace. He will shame us. He cannot win. Sifu Bohan's voice was as cold as the mountain air. Losing a fight is a setback. Forfeiting is a dishonor. He jabbed a finger at Run. You will go out there. You will use the Jade Pillar form. You will not be clumsy. And you will not be soft. Do you understand me? Ren looked at Bohan's angry, terrified eyes. He looked at Jin's face, twisted in a mask of contempt and pain. Ren bowed. Yes, Sifu. But as he walked toward the platform, he knew. The Jade Pillar form wasn't going to save him. His opponent was waiting. His name was Tao, but everyone called him the Iron Ox of the Steel Fist School. Tao was a beast. He was a man made of scars, calluses, and pure, concentrated rage. His school's philosophy was the opposite of the Jade Pillars. Why block when you can break? The gong chimed. The fight, if you could call it that, was a massacre. Tao didn't use techniques. He used impacts. He was a storm, a hurricane, and Run was a single, trembling leaf. Run tried the Jade Pillar forms. He tried the flowing water block. Tao's fist went through it, catching Run in the ribs. Ren heard a crack, and fire exploded in his side. He tried the stone mountain stance. Tao simply kicked his leg out from under him. Ren was a puppet. He was thrown, struck, and battered. The crowd was laughing. In the corner of his eye, he could see Jyn, his face a perfect picture of I told you so. He saw Sifu Bohan, who wasn't even watching the fight anymore. Bohan was just staring at the floor, his legacy turning to dust. Tao picked Ren up by the front of his uniform, his fist the size of a small melon, and hit him. Ren's world went white. He flew backward, skidding off the platform and crashing into the water buckets. He lay there, soaked, his ribs screaming, his vision swimming. He could hear the referee starting the count. He could hear Jyn's voice, clear as a bell. "Stay down, you idiot. Don't make it worse. Don't make it worse." Ren tasted copper in his mouth. He looked at his hands, his wrong hands. The hands I could feel. He thought of the bonsai tree. He thought of the scroll. The gentle, warm hand. He realized with a sudden, terrifying clarity that Sifu Bohan had never told him why it was banned. He'd only said that it was. It broke the rules. Ren looked up. Tao was standing over him, laughing, flexing for the crowd. The Iron Ox, a man of pure, unbreakable strength. But Ren saw it, just like he'd seen Bohan's limp and Jyn's tension. He saw it. In Tao's eyes, beneath the rage, beneath the Iron Ox persona, was sheer, unadulterated terror. Tao wasn't strong. He was petrified. Ren put his hand on the wet platform and slowly, agonizingly, stood up. He spat out a pink-stained tooth. The referee looked stunned. The crowd went silent. Tao's smile vanished. "You stay down," Tao growled, advancing. "I can't," Ren whispered, his cracked rib sending jolts of agony up his spine. Tao roared and charged, his fist raised for the finishing blow, the steel fist that had broken men's careers. Ren didn't raise a block. He didn't assume a stance. He just stepped inside. He moved past the punch, so close he could feel the heat radiating off Tao's body. He was inside Tao's guard, inside his world. And he used the Shunan Show. It wasn't a strike. It was a series of movements so fast, so soft, they were almost invisible. His left hand, fingers spread, brushed lightly against Tao's carotid sinus. Not to choke, but to pulse, sending a shiver through the man's nervous system. His right thumb pressed, just for a millisecond, into the hollow of Tao's shoulder. The Yunmen point, the cloud door, a place where, according to the scroll, grief is stored. As Tao's body instinctively recoiled from the strange sensation, Ren's hand followed him. He didn't chase. He accompanied. His palm landed, with no force at all, flat against the center of Tao's chest. The solar plexus. The center of ego. Ren didn't push. He just held it there. A gentle, warm hand. Time stopped. The Iron Ox froze. His giant, melon-sized fist, an inch from Ren's face, wavered. Tao's eyes, those two black pits of rage, went wide. He looked confused. He stared at Ren, his breathing ragged. He tried to speak. A small, gurgling sound came out. And then, the unthinkable happened. A single tear tracked its way through the sweat and grime on Tao's face. Tao's Iron Ox mask didn't just crack. It disintegrated. His shoulders began to shake. A low sound rumbled in his chest. Not a growl, but a whimper. Tao, the Iron Ox of the Steel Fist School, looked at Ren, his eyes filled with a lifetime of pain and gratitude. And then he wailed. It was not a cry of pain. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated, catastrophic release. It was the sound of a dam breaking, of a chain snapping, of a cage springing open. Tao sank to his knees. He didn't fall. He folded. He covered his face with his massive, scarred hands, and he sobbed like a lost child, his entire body convulsing on the platform. The arena was so quiet, you could hear the drip, drip, drip of the water from the bucket Ren had overturned. Ren just stood there, his hands still tingling, his ribs on fire. The referee, pale and trembling, had no idea what to do. There was no rule for this. Finally, he raised Ren's hand, his voice shaking. I don't. The opponent is unable to continue. And then he looked at Ren's face and Sifu Bohan's. And he made a decision. Disqualified, the referee shouted, finding his voice. The challenger from the Jade Pillar Temple is disqualified for uncharted conduct and disgracing the opponent. The crowd, released from the tension, erupted in a roar of boos and confusion. Ren didn't care. He was watching Sifu Bohan. Bohan's face was not angry. It was not disappointed. It was white. It was the color of fear. He walked onto the platform, pushed past the medics who were now hesitantly approaching the still-sobbing Tao. Bohan grabbed Run by the arm. His grip was like iron. He dragged Run off the platform, through the stunned students, and into the back tunnels. Jyn, his face a mask of pure, baffled contempt, hobbled after them. Bohan didn't stop until they were in the empty locker room. He threw Ren against the wall. "What?" Bohan hissed, his voice trembling with a rage so cold it burned. "What did you do?" I used to form Sifu," Ren stammered, coughing. "The Shunan Show." Bohan's hand moved faster than Run had ever seen. The slap echoed in the small room like a gunshot. "You did not win." Bohan roared. "You did not fight. You violated him. You reached inside him. That is not our way. That is forbidden." "But Sifu," Ren pleaded, holding his cheek. "It worked. He was in so much." "Silence." Bohan screamed. "You have disgraced the Jade Pillar. You have shamed me. You took a man's strength and you broke it with pity. You are a cancer in this temple, Ren. A weakness." He pointed to the door. "You are banished. Your name will be struck from the registry. You will never set foot on this mountain again. You are nothing." Jyn, standing in the doorway, smirked. Justice, his face said, had finally been served. Ren looked at the two men, the perfect student and the perfect master. And he saw two men who were more terrified, more broken, than the iron ox sobbing on the platform. Ren didn't plead. He didn't argue. He just bowed, his cracked ribs screaming in protest. And for the second time that day, he walked away. He left the mountain, the temple, and the only life he had ever known, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the memory of a forbidden touch. The twist, the real one, didn't come for 10 years. 10 years is a long time. Ren did not become a wandering martial arts master. He became a dishwasher, a night watchman, a nobody. He lived in a cramped, damp apartment in the city, a place that smelled of boiled cabbage and mold. He buried his kung fu. He buried the Shunan Show. He just existed. But the observation never left him. He saw the chronic migraines that plagued his boss at the restaurant. He saw the crippling arthritis in the old woman who lived next door, a pain that seemed to flare up every time her son failed to visit. He saw their knots. One day, his boss, clutching his head, snapped at him. Run, without thinking, walked up behind him and gently pressed. 2 fingers on the man's temples, a thumb at the base of his skull. The boss stiffened. "What are you, what?" Run held the pressure for 30 seconds. The boss's breathing, shallow and pained, suddenly deepened. The tension flowed out of him like water from tap. The migraines stopped. They never came back. He accidentally bumped into the old woman in the hall, steadying her. His hand rested on her forearm, his thumb finding the knot of her pain. She gasped, and her gnarled fingers, for the first time in years, unclenched. Ren, reluctantly, accidentally became a healer. He opened a tiny, anonymous wellness clinic in the back of a laundromat. He called it the Quiet Hand. He didn't advertise. People just found him. People came to him with back pain, with insomnia, with sorrow. He didn't call it kung fu. He called it trauma release. He used the Shunan Show, the gentle warm hand, and he untied the knots of the city, one broken person at a time. He was poor. He was unknown. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't wrong. Then the letter arrived. It was on expensive, cream-colored parchment, embossed with the Jade Pillar logo. It wasn't from Sifu Bohan. It wasn't from Sifu Jyn, who, Ren had heard, was now the grandmaster of the flawless temple. The letter was from the temple's accountant. It said only 3 things. The school is failing. He is dying. He asked for you. Ren returned to the mountain. The Jade Pillar temple was pristine. It was perfect. The stones were polished to a mirror shine. The bamboo was trimmed with geometric precision. It was also empty. There were no shouts, no thud of striking bags. There was only the silence, not of discipline, but of a tomb. He found Sifu Jyn in the main hall, training 2 remaining students. Jyn was a perfect Sifu. His voice was a whip. His movements were flawless. The 2 students were terrified. They moved like rigid, hollow dolls, their forms perfect, their eyes dead. Jyn saw Run. His face, now lined with the stress of perfection, hardened. The healer returns. Jyn spat. Have you come to gloat? To humiliate us again? I came, Rin said, his voice quiet, because I was asked. Rin found Sifu Bohan in his chambers. The man who had been a granite monolith was now a pile of dry leaves, a husk in a bed. Bohan's eyes fluttered open. He saw Run, and just like the iron ox 10 years earlier, his face began to crumple. You came? Bohan whispered, his voice a dry rattle. I came, Sifu. I failed. Bohan choked, a tear cutting a clean path through the dust on his cheek. I failed you. I failed him. Who, Sifu? How? Bohan whispered. The iron ox. Phaeton said. The truth, he sensed, was finally here. The Shunan Show, Bohan gasped, reaching a trembling hand toward Rin. The gentle, warm hand. Elite. He told Rin everything. The technique wasn't banned by the ancestors. It was developed by the temple's founder, who was not a warrior. He was a physician. The Shunan Show was never, ever a combat technique. It was a diagnostic tool, a form of ancient, radical acupressure. It was designed to find chi blockages, to find emotional trauma, and release it. But why? Rin asked. Why ban it? Why call it disgrace? Bohan's face twisted in a mask of ancient shame. Because I could not do it. He confessed. Bohan's own master had been a brute, a man who believed only in power. Bohan had risen to prominence through force. When he inherited the temple and the secret scroll of the founder, he could not understand it. He practiced it, and nothing happened. His hands were calloused. His spirit was closed. He couldn't feel the knots. I saw it as weakness. Bohan choked. I saw it as vulnerable. If our rivals like the Steel Fist learned that our ultimate technique was gentleness, they would laugh. They would destroy us. He had banned it. He had forbidden it to protect his own pride, to protect his own legacy. That day, Bohan wept at the tournament. I was terrified. I saw you do what I never could. You listened. That boy, Tao, his master, we learned later, was a monster. He beat him every single day. Tao didn't live with rage, Run. He lived with terror. Bohan gripped Rin's sleeve. You didn't break him. You didn't disgrace him. You saved him. Bohan explained that Tao had left the Steel Fist School the very next day. He'd vanished. Bohan, consumed by guilt, had hired an investigator. He's a baker, Bohan whispered, a strange, broken smile on his face. In a small, seaside town. He has a family. He is happy. He sent me a letter last year. He asked me to thank the man who opened the cage. Rin's world tilted. The banned technique, the crime, had been an act of liberation. And Jyn? Rin asked. I chose him, Bohan said, his voice fading. He was perfect, like me. He was hard. He was strong. I pushed all my pride, all my fear onto him. I made him the Sifu. I forced him to uphold the lie. The school is bankrupt, Rin said. It wasn't a question. Perfection is a hollow master, Bohan whispered. It demands everything, and it gives nothing. Sifu Bohan died 3 days later. After the funeral, Rin was preparing to leave. He had his closure. He was confronted in the empty, silent training hall by Sifu Jyn. Jyn was vibrating. He was a wire stretched too tight. The perfect Sifu. The flawless master of a bankrupt, empty school. So, Jyn hissed, dropping into a perfect fighting stance. The master is dead, and the saint has returned. Are you here to take it? To replace my lie with your truth? I'm here to say goodbye, Jyn, Rin said, turning to leave. You will not. Jyn roared. He attacked. It was not a spar. It was an assault. Jyn was a blur of perfect, textbook rage. Kicks, punches, chops, every single one aimed to maim. And Rin just moved. He didn't fight back. He didn't use the Shunan Show. He just avoided. He parried. He flowed. For 10 years, Jyn had been practicing for him. For 10 years, Rin had been practicing people. Jyn was fast. Rin was present. Jin's perfect attacks met only air. He was fighting a ghost, a shadow, and it was maddening him. Fight me, Jyn screamed, his perfect voice cracking, tears of sheer frustration in his eyes. Stop pitying me. Show me the disgrace. Fight me. He lunged, overextending himself in a final, desperate, imperfect lunge. Rin didn't dodge. He caught him. He stepped inside the lunge, just as he had with Tao. He didn't block the punch. He accepted it, wrapped his arms around Jin's torso, absorbing the force, and held him. Jyn froze, his fist against Ren's chest, his body locked in an embrace of combat. You let go. Jyn panted, his body rigid. No, Ren said, his voice quiet. And as Jyn struggled, his perfect form breaking against Ren's simple, unbreakable center, Ren applied the Shunan Show. His hands didn't strike. They pressed, one on Jin's back, over the heart meridian, the other on his shoulder, at the base of his neck, where the tension of a lifetime of perfection was stored. He held him. He listened. And Jyn, the flawless Sifu, the perfect student, shattered. He collapsed in Ren's arms. He didn't just cry. He grieved. He grieved for the childhood Bohan had stolen. He grieved for the pressure of being the perfect hollow man. He grieved for the jealousy, the rage, and the terrible, crushing loneliness of it all. Ren just held him until it was over. The Jade Pillar Temple did reopen, but not as a temple. It reopened as the Jade Pillar Sanctuary. But he was not the Sifu. They were. Jyn, humbled and broken open, became the master of form. He taught the stances, the blocks, the discipline. He taught the body. In Ren became the master of intent. He taught the Shunan Show. He taught listening. He taught the spirit. They combined the two. The perfect form was now used, not to break but to heal. The students learned to fight, yes, but they first learned why people hurt. The banned kung fu technique that broke every rule had finally been given a new one. The most unbreakable rule of all. It turned out the only rule the technique had ever really broken was the illusion that strength and honor are the same thing. Is true strength the power to break someone, or the courage to find out why they are broken? Let us know what you think in the comments. We read every single one. If you enjoyed this tale of wonder, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a story. See you in the next video.